Good morning, everyone. Let us start this class and let me share the screen with you. We were reading this uh, chapter 6, which is titled Versification. And here, as you saw, how Tagore is relating, he is recapitulating how he started to write poetry. And towards the end of this chapter, as uh, as we see here, one of his brothers had asked him to write poems, and Tagore started to write poems. And the editor of the national paper, Nabogopal Mitter, uh, one day when he came to their house, uh, Tagore started to read his poem that he had written when his brother asked Nabogopal Babu to listen to the poem. So, my works had not as yet become voluminous. The poet could carry all his effusions about in his pockets. I was writer, printer, and publisher all in one. So, he would write the poems, he would print them, that is, he would write them, and he would also uh, publish them. My brother, as advertiser, being my only colleague, I had composed some verses on the lotus, which I recited to Nabagopal Babu then and there at the foot of the stairs in a voice pitched as high as my enthusiasm. So Tagore was quite enthusiastic and he recited his poem on Tagore. Well done, said he with a smile. But what is a Dhirev? So Nabagopal Babu praised Tagore's efforts, but he asked what that word Tiref meant. So he had used this word in his poem. How I had got hold of this word, I do not remember. The ordinary name would have fitted the meter quite as well. But this was the one word in the whole poem on which I had pinned my hopes. It had doubtless duly impressed our officers. So actually, in the Bengali version of my Reminiscences, we find that Tagore is saying that he could have used the word bhromor, which means the same, but since he did not want to disturb the rhyme scheme, that is why he used this word Dhirev, which he gathered from somewhere. And he thought that this word would uh, help to increase the quality of his poem. But curiously enough, Nabagopal Babu did not succumb to it. On the contrary, he smiled. So Nabagopal Babu actually, he was not at all impressed by the efforts of Tagore, and he smiled at this word, Dhirev, that Tagore had used. He could not be an understanding man, I felt sure. I never read poetry to him again. I have since added many years to my age, but have not been able to improve upon my test of what does or does not constitute understanding in my hearer. However, Nabagopal Babu might smile, the word Dhirev, like a bee drunk with honey, stuck to its place, unmoved. So Tagore was not at all pleased with the response from Nabagopal Babu, and he thought that Nabagopal Babu actually was belittling his effort. But so he did not change the word. He did not change the word, and he actually decided that Nabagopal Babu had not done justice to his efforts. And he says in the last part of this chapter that since that day, he has added many years, that is, he is an old man now, a middle-aged man, but I, he has not been able to improve upon his test of what does or does not constitute understanding. So it is difficult to really judge what the hearer would, how the hearer would respond. So this is the chapter on the beginning of Tagore's efforts at writing poetry. And this is the response of Nabagopal Babu, as we see here. Now we'll come to chapter 7. And here, this chapter is titled Various Learning. One of the teachers of the normal school also gave us private lessons at home. His body was lean, his features dry, his voice sharp. So just look at the way Tagore is describing this teacher in the normal school who gave some private tuition also. So he was a very thin kind of a man. He had dry features and he had a very sharp voice. He looked like a cane incarnate. So he was such a thin person. His hours were from 6 to 9:30 in the morning, from right at dawn, 6 o'clock in the morning. So he came at that hour and he started to teach the boys till 9:30. With him, our reading ranged from popular literary and science readers in Bengali to the epic of Meghnad Bath. So he actually taught them books on science to poems like Meghnad Bath Kabbo by Madhusudan Datta. My third brother was very keen on imparting to us a variety of knowledge. So at home, we had to go through much more than what was required by the school course. We had to get up before dawn and, clad in loin cloths, begin with a bout or two with a blind wrestler. So now we will get a kind of a routine, what the boys had to learn. So right from dawn, the first thing they had to do was, of course, get up before dawn when it was still dark. And the first thing was to, that was a lesson in wrestling with a blind wrestler. Without a pause, we donned our tunics on our dusty bodies and started on our courses of literature, mathematics, geography, and history. So these 4 subjects. So after wrestling, after physical exercise, now they would start to study the different subjects one by one. They did not get any kind of break. So literature, mathematics, geography, and history, one after another. On our return from school, our drawing and gymnastic masters would be ready for us. In the evening, Aghor Babu came for our English lessons. It was only after 9 that we were free. So just imagine what the boys went through. So they would be getting up early, almost when it was still dark. They would have to have a bout of wrestling, then these 4 subjects, then they would go to school. And when they came back, the drawing lessons and the gymnastic lessons would be they have to attend to. And in the evening, it would be the English lessons from this teacher called Aghor Babu, and the English lesson would continue till 9 at night. So it was a very hectic schedule, as you can see. On Sunday morning, we had singing lessons with Vishnu. Then, almost every Sunday, came Shitanath Dotto to give us demonstrations in physical science. The last were of great interest to me. I remember distinctly the feeling of wonder which filled me when he put some water with sawdust in it on the fire in a glass vessel and showed us how the lightened hot water came up and the cold water went down, and how finally the water began to boil. So on Sunday mornings, there was no break. First, the singing lessons with this person called Vishnu, then the physical science, the study of physical science, the experiments which were demonstrated by this teacher called Shitanath Dotto. And Tagore was interested in these scientific experiments. I also felt a great elation the day I learned that water is a separable part of milk and that milk thickens when boiled because the water frees itself as a vapor from the connection. Sunday did not feel Sunday-like unless Sitanath Babu turned up. So actually on Sundays they had these science lessons, and Tagore enjoyed these science lessons, and he missed the science lessons if Shitanath Babu failed to turn up on a particular Sunday. So he learned some things about milk and water, how they were separable parts. There was also an hour when we would be told all about human bones by a pupil of the Campbell Medical School, for which purpose a skeleton with the bones fastened together by wires was hung up in our schoolroom. So the medical science that was also imparted. And finally, time was also found for Pandit Herembo Dottoratno to come and get us to learn by rote rules of Sanskrit grammar. So Sanskrit grammar was also another lesson that Herembo Dottoratno gave them. I am not sure which of them, the names of the bones or the sutras of the grammarian, were the more jaw-breaking. I think the latter took the palm. So Tagore is jokingly saying that he was at a loss to sort of decide which was more jaw-breaking, the Latin names of the the bones or the sutras of the Sanskrit grammar, and he decided that the latter, that is the Sanskrit grammar, the sutras were the more difficult. Uh, so in this way, the lessons continued. We began to learn English after we had made considerable progress in learning through the medium of Bengali. Aghor Babu, our English tutor, was attending the medical college, so he came to teach us in the evening. So actually a doctor to be, used to teach them English. So this is actually something unusual, but that was the case with Tagore and the other boys. Books tell us that the discovery of fire was one of the biggest discoveries of man. I do not wish to dispute this, but I cannot help feeling how fortunate little birds are that their parents cannot light lamps of an evening. They have their language lessons early in the morning, and you must have noticed how gleefully they learn them. Of course, we must not forget that they do not have to learn the English language. So here also find Tagore's humor, how he is comparing how the birds actually they do not have to learn English, the English language during the evening with lamps being lighted. So they have their lessons in the morning. But Okhuru Babu came in the evenings when they were really tired, and he used to impart English lessons to them. The health of this medical student tutor of ours was so good that even the fervent and united wishes of his three pupils were not enough to cause his absence even for a day. Only once was he laid up with a broken head when, on the occasion of a fight between the Indian and Eurasian students of the medical college, a chair was thrown at him. It was a regrettable occurrence. Nevertheless, we were not able to take it as a personal sorrow, and his recovery somehow seemed to us needlessly swift. So this Aghor Babu was really, he had very good health, and he did not uh, miss his lessons. Actually, he came every day, every evening. And only once he could not come because he was injured because of a fight when a chair was thrown at him. But his recovery was really swift. And Tagore here says that the three boys, including him, they thought that he was really, he had recovered too soon. So they wanted him to be absent, to have been absent for a longer period of time. So this was the incident. It is evening. The rain is pouring in lance-like showers. Our lane is under knee-deep water. The tank has overflown into the garden, and the bushy tops of the bale trees are seen standing out over the waters. Our whole being on this delightful rainy evening is radiating rapture like the Kodombo flower, its fragrant spikes. The time for the arrival of our tutor is over by just a few minutes. Yet there is no certainty. We are sitting on the veranda overlooking the lane, watching and watching with a piteous gaze. So Tagore is describing a rainy evening and how it was raining, and the lane was really waterlogged. The tank had overflown, and uh, it was time for their English lessons. And they were hoping that their English tutor, that is Aghor Babu, would not arrive. They were looking at the lane. All of a sudden, with a great big thump, our hearts seemed to fall in a swoon. The familiar black umbrella has turned the corner undefeated, even by such weather. Could it not be somebody else? It certainly could not. In the wide, wide world, there might be found another, his equal in pertinacity, but never in this little lane of ours. So their hopes were belied. It was indeed Aghor Babu who appeared even in this inclement weather. So the boys had to study English. Looking back on his period as a whole, I cannot say that Aghor Babu was a hard man. He did not rule us with a rod. Even his rebukes did not amount to scoldings. But whatever may have been his personal merits, his time was evening, and his subject English. I am certain that even an angel would have seemed a veritable messenger of Jama to any Bengali boy if he came to him at the end of his miserable day at school and lighted a dismally dim lamp to teach him English. So when he looks back at these lessons that were imparted by Aghor Babu, Tagore is saying that actually Aghor Babu was not a very hard kind of a strict teacher. He did not scold them much. He did not rebuke them hard, but actually the time was not really right, because they were extremely tired and they could not really keep awake. It was very difficult for them to study English during that time. Uh, how well do I remember the day our tutor tried to impress on us the attractiveness of the English language. With this object, he recited to us with great unction some lines. Prose or poetry we could not tell out of an English book. It had a most unlooked for effect on us. We laughed so immoderately that he had to dismiss us for that evening. He must have realized that he held no easy brief, that to get us to pronounce in his favor would entail a contest ranging over years. So one day, Oghur Babu was trying to tell the boys about the beauty of the English language. And he started reciting from a book, but the boys, they were not in a mood to listen to him. Firstly, they could not understand what he was reading, whether it was a poem or actually it was a prose passage. So the response on their part was really uncalled for. They started to laugh, and Aghor Babu understood that it was no use to continue with that reading. And he understood that it would not be an easy task for him to sort of make them like the English language. Aghor Babu would sometimes try to bring the zephyr of outside knowledge. A zephyr is a southerly wind, to play on the arid routine of our schoolroom. One day he brought a paper parcel out of his pocket and said, "I'll show you today a wonderful piece of work of the Creator." With this, he untied the paper wrapping and, producing a portion of the vocal organs of a human being, proceeded to expound the marvels of its mechanism. So you will recall that he was a medical student, and one day he said that I will show you something very interesting and wonderful. And with that, he showed them the vocal organs of a human being. And he started to explain to the boys the mechanism of how human beings talked, how it was this organ which enabled us to talk. I can still call to mind the shock this gave me at the time. I had always thought the whole man spoke, had never even imagined that the act of speech could be viewed in this detached way. So Tagore, when actually, of course, he was a small boy, he did not know anything about all these, the vocal cords and all that. So he thought that the whole person spoke. When anyone spoke, the whole of him spoke. And when he saw the vocal organs, obviously he was shocked. However wonderful the mechanism of a part may be, it is certainly less so than the whole man. Not that I put it to myself in so many words, but that was the cause of my dismay. It was perhaps because the tutor had lost sight of this truth, that the pupil could not respond to the enthusiasm with which he was discoursing on the subject. So Aghor Babu was really waxing eloquent on the subject of how the vocal organs enabled human beings to talk, and he was telling the boys about the mechanism in a very detailed way, but that made no favorable impression on Tagore. So he could not really look upon that as in a very detached way. Another day he took us to the dissecting room of the medical college. The body of an old woman was stretched on the table. This did not disturb me so much, but an amputated leg which was lying on the floor upset me altogether. To view man in this fragmentary way seemed to me so horrid, so absurd, that I could not get rid of the impression of that dark, unmeaning leg for many a day. So, Aghor Babu, actually, perhaps he thought that he should give them some medical lessons, and he took the boys to his college, medical college, and he took them to the dissecting room, and that was uh, a sight, the sight of this leg, amputated leg that was lying on the floor, that really uh, upset Tagore. Obviously, I did not like the look of that, and it appeared to be quite horrifying. So here, as you can see, Tagore is saying that he looked upon man as a whole uh, being, not as the organs being detached and taken out of the whole body. And the impression, that was another shock that he received. After getting through Parry Shortcut's first and second English readers, we entered upon McCulloch's course of reading. So Parry Shortcut's book, that was one of the first lessons that children had, the English book. Our bodies were weary at the end of the day, our minds yearning for the inner apartments. The book was black and thick with difficult words, and the subject matter could hardly have been more inviting, for in those days Mother Saraswati's maternal tenderness was not in evidence. So, um, the time of the lesson was in the evening, as you know, and the boys were tired. They wanted to go and have their meal and lie down and go to sleep. The book it did not have a favorable look. It was full of difficult words, and obviously uh, the maternal tenderness, as he says jokingly here, Mother Saraswati's maternal tenderness was not in that book. Children's books were not full of pictures then, as they are now. Moreover, at the gateway of every reading lesson stood sentinel, an array of words with separated syllables and forbidding accent marks, like fixed bayonets, barring the way to the infant mind. I had repeatedly attacked their serried ranks in vain. So, when I started to read these words, the difficult words, they found that they had been broken up into separate syllables. So, and with the accents falling on different syllables. As you know, English is an accented language, and it has to be pronounced uh, uh, accordingly. So, Tagore found all these things quite uh, difficult and forbidding. So obviously tried hard to master the lessons, but he could not succeed. Our tutor would try to shame us by recounting the exploits of some other brilliant pupil of his. We felt duly ashamed and also not well disposed towards that other pupil. But this did not help to dispel the darkness which clung to that black volume. So Aghor Babu, actually, he told them about some other boy who was a really brilliant boy and who mastered all the English lessons, and how they were lagging far behind. So obviously they felt embarrassed, ashamed of themselves, but still they could not really feel well disposed. They could not love the English lessons. Providence, out of pity for mankind, has instilled a soporific charm into all tedious things. No sooner did our English lessons begin than our heads began to knot. sprinkling water into our eyes, or taking a run round the verandas were palliatives which had no lasting effect. Tagore is here saying that Providence actually has given us a kind of a cure to tedious things, boring things. So this English lesson was really boring, and whenever it started, they started to nod. That is, they felt very sleepy and they almost fell over. So they tried to sprinkle water into their eyes. They started to run here and there on the veranda, but these methods did not really enable them to keep awake. If by any chance my eldest brother happened to be passing that way and caught a glimpse of our sleep-tormented condition, we would get let off for the rest of the evening. It did not take our drowsiness another moment to get completely cured. So just see, actually, sometimes they pretended that they were feeling sleepy, so that Aghor Babu would let them go. And sometimes their eldest brother, uh, when he was passing, he would look at the boys and see that they were really dropping off, and he would then ask Aghor Babu to end the lesson. But immediately after, when Aghor Babu went away, sorry, uh, the sleep also departed from their eyes. So this is the chapter, as you can see, chapter 7, various learning. And this chapter actually, this is important because we get a picture of how the boys, the Tagore himself and the two other boys, how their lessons were imparted to them, and who were the teachers. And the English teacher, Aghor Babu, we come to know about him, what type of a teacher he was and what lessons he taught them. So this is an account of the teaching at home. Next chapter is chapter 8, my first outing. You will remember that Tagore was completely confined to his home. He was not allowed to go out. So this is the first time that he had the opportunity to go out. Once, when the dengue fever was raging in Calcutta, some portion of our extensive family had to take shelter in Chatu Babu's riverside villa. We were among them. The dengue fever was rampant, and they had to leave Calcutta and take shelter in Chatu Babu's riverside villa. This was my first outing. The bank of the Ganges welcomed me into its lap like a friend of a former birth. There, in front of the servants' quarters, was a grove of guava trees, and sitting in the veranda under the shade of these, gazing at the flowing current through the gaps between their trunks, my days would pass. So he would sit there on the veranda, and he would look through the guava trees. Every morning as I awoke, I somehow felt the day coming to me like a new gilt-edged letter. with some unheard of news awaiting me on the opening of the envelope, and lest I should lose any fragment of it, I would hurry. Just a moment. Okay, so let us look at the text again. Every morning as I awoke, I somehow felt the day come to me like a new gilt-edged letter, with some unheard of news awaiting me on the opening of the envelope. And lest I should lose any fragment of it, I would hurry through my toilet to my chair outside. So he was very eager to go and sit on the chair and look at the outside world. Every day there was the ebb and flow of the tide on the Ganges, the various gait of so many different boats, the shifting of the shadows of the trees from west to east, and over the fringe of shade patches of the woods on the opposite bank, a gush of golden lifeblood through the pierced breast of the evening sky. So here Tagore is describing the scene that he witnessed, and how as he sat there he could see the changing, how the season, actually how the scene changed. Some days would be cloudy from early morning, the opposite woods black shadows moving over the river. Then with a rush would come the vociferous rain, blotting out the horizon, the dim line of the other bank taking its leave in tears, the river swelling with suppressed heavings, and the moist wind making free with the foliage of the trees overhead. So this is a description of the natural scenery which Tagore observed from the veranda, and it would be changing. I felt that out of the bowels of wall, beam, and rafter, I had a new birth into the outside. In making fresh acquaintance with things, the dingy covering of petty habits seemed to drop off the world. I am sure that the sugarcane molasses which I had with cold luchis for my breakfast could not have tasted different from the ambrosia which Indro quaffs in his heaven. For the immortality is not in the nectar but in the taster, and thus is missed by those who seek it. So he is referring to the these sugarcane molasses, that is akhir gur, and which he had with the luchis for his breakfast, and it appeared to be like ambrosia, which Lord Indro, the the king of the gods, uh, he gets to drink. It would be like ambrosia. Behind the house was a walled-in enclosure with a tank and a flight of steps leading into the water from a bathing platform. On one side of the platform was an immense jambolan tree, and all round were various fruit trees, growing in thick clusters, in the shade of which the tank nestled in its privacy. The veiled beauty of this retired little inner garden had a wonderful charm for me, so different from the broad expanse of the river bank in front. So here again he is describing the big tree and the scene. It was like the bride of the house in the seclusion of her midday siesta, resting on a many-colored quilt of her own embroidering, murmuring low the secrets of her heart. Many a midday hour did I spend alone under the jambolan tree, dreaming of the fearsome kingdom of the Jaxas within the depths of the tank. So the boy Tagore was happy in spending his time alone in this inner garden, and the garden was different. It had these trees, and it was a kind of a very secret place. And Tagore was fond of spending his midday hours there, looking at the tank and dreaming of the Jagsers. I had a great curiosity to see a Bengal village, its clusters of cottages, its thatched pavilions, its lanes and bathing places, its games and gatherings, its fields and markets, its life as a whole, as I saw it in imagination, greatly attracted me. So he was a boy who was born and brought up till then in Calcutta, and he had no idea what a Bengal village looked like. So he was very curious about all these things. Just such a village was right on the other side of our garden wall. It was forbidden to us. We had come out, but not into freedom. We had been in a cage and were now on a perch, but the chain was still there. So it was a peculiar situation, though they were living on the outskirts of Calcutta. Still, in that particular house, they could not go outside that garden wall. So that was the boundary wall where they had to stay inside that. And Tagore is here comparing his condition with a bird which was previously shut up in a cage. But now it has been brought out of that cage and it is sitting on a perch. But the chain is still there on its leg. So it would not be able to fly away. So it could not be said that he had gained complete freedom. One morning, two of our elders went out for a stroll into the village. I could not restrain my eagerness any longer, and slipping out unperceived, I followed them for some distance. As I went along the deeply shaded lane with its close, thorny shaura hedges, by the side of the tank covered with green water weeds, I rapturously took in picture after picture. So just imagine how the picture of the little Tagore, he was out outside outside the boundary walls of the house for the very first time, and he followed two of his elders who were going for a walk in the village. And he was so excited. He looked here and there. He enjoyed every moment. I still remember the man with bare body engaged in a belated toilet on the edge of the tank, cleaning his teeth with the chewed end of a twig. Suddenly my elders became aware of my presence behind them. Get away, go back at once, they scolded. So at first they had not noticed the little boy coming behind them, following them. And when Tagore, suddenly they became aware of his presence, and they told him to go back. They were scandalized. My feet were bare. I had no scarf or upper robe over my tunic. I was not dressed fit to come out, as if it was my fault. So he was barefooted. He did not have a proper dress. So there was this dress code which the Tagore household maintained. You could not come out go outside without being properly dressed. I never owned any socks or superfluous apparel, so not only went back disappointed for that morning, but had no chance of repairing my shortcomings and being allowed to come out any other day. So obviously he was not allowed to go out again. However, though the beyond was thus shut out from behind. In front, the Ganges freed me from all bondage, and my mind, whenever it listed, could embark on the boats gaily sailing along and high away to lands not named in any geography. So Tagore was restricted, and he was restricted, and he could not go beyond that garden wall behind the house. But in front, the scene was open before him. He could look at the river Ganges, which was flowing, and he could look at the boats which were sailing on the river, and his mind, of course, sailed along with them to far off, to distant places, places which were still to be discovered, which were not to be found on any map in the geography book. So his imagination uh, would roam freely. So this is the way he could compensate the loss of the scene that he had just once witnessed outside the house, behind the house. This was 40 years ago. Since then, I have never set foot again in that Champok shaded villa garden. The same old house and the same old trees must still be there, but I know it cannot any longer be the same. For where am I now to get that fresh feeling of wonder which made it what it was? So Tagore is saying that 40 years have passed by. So obviously, he was about 8 or 9 years old, and he is almost 50 years now, 50 years old now. So uh, he has not had any opportunity of visiting that house, uh, and that was the only time that he had stayed there. And he thinks that that old house must be there, and that beautiful garden, villa garden with the chompok shaded uh, trees must be there. But in his mind, he knows that if he were to go back now and look at the scene now and look at the house, uh, that would appear to be different from what it had appeared to that little boy at that point of time, so many years ago. So the way that that little boy looked at the scene would or it was really different. It would not match with the now mature man, the middle-aged mature man, mature Tagore, looking at the scene. So that feeling of wonder, that feeling of surprise, that feeling of enjoyment would not be there. So the time has passed. With the feeling of enjoyment and wonder, uh, that has also passed. We returned to our Jorashako house in town, and my days were as so many mouthfuls offered up to be gulped down into the yawning interior of the normal school. So here, this chapter, yes, this ends here. And as we can see, this chapter is about uh, Tagore's first trip outside his house, trip to this Chatu Babu's riverside villa. And this is a short chapter, but it is important because it registers or it records how Tagore had felt, how the little boy had felt when he had gone to this country house for the very first time, and his experience one day when he was able to sneak out and walk a little way following the two elders, and how enjoyable that little walk had been for him. So let us stop here, and I'll stop sharing this the text with you, and